And welcome back to FoxNews.com and our continuing coverage of the Republican National Convention from Cleveland, Ohio. I'm Monica Crowley. Thank you so much for joining us today. Joining me now is Ashley Bell. He is a delegate from the great state of Georgia, the Peach State.
Yes, the Peach State.
Welcome, Ashley. Great to see you.
I took some offense to South Carolina saying they were the Peach State last night. That was probably the downside of my convention.
Very offensive to native Georgians, right?
Yes,
well, welcome.
Great
to see you. Welcome to Cleveland.
Thank you.
What's your sense of the convention so far?
You know, it's been interesting. This is not my first convention. You know, as a prior life, I was a Democrat. I switched parties. So I'm one of the few people that have seen both. But this convention is actually more fun than 2012.
Actually, you raised a very important point. Yeah. What convinced you to switch parties from Democrat to Republican?
Well, you know, that is a long story, but the short version is this. 2010 is when I switched parties. That's when being a conservative Democrat became an oxymoron. When Democrats have full control of all the government, it basically showed that the leftist side of the party was going to run everything. So when Obamacare happened, I couldn't stay. Like when they ran Obamacare through, I decided I had to leave.
That is a very interesting epiphany, and I know a lot of centrist Democrats who sort of came of age under Bill Clinton are really disenfranchised from their own party. And I hear from a lot of these Democrats who have said, look, the party has left me, and I'm not at home here, and I'm actually going to vote for Donald Trump. It's a fascinating realignment.
Well, you know, in the South, we used to call them blue dog Democrats. And blue dog Democrat was just an old school yellow dog Democrat who was being choked to death by the liberals in the party. Well, in 2010, that dog died.
You know what's fascinating, too, though, that Mrs. Clinton is the Democratic nominee this year, and her husband successfully moved the Democratic Party, kicking and screaming, from the radical left to the center, and he was rewarded twice for that.
He was.
And now Barack Obama has successfully moved it back to the radical left.
Very true.
Hence the rise of Bernie Sanders, where he's comfortable in that party, where somebody like you is not comfortable in the Democratic Party.
Absolutely not. You know, it's unfortunate that the politics is shaped up this way, but honestly, I think it's better off in this regard. You know what you're getting when you're elected Democrat now. There's no more of this bait and switch that Southern Democrats sometimes would do. They would go to D.C. and then all of a sudden get chummy with the liberals and sell out the conservatives. Because we have the same problem on the Republican side. You have too many Republicans who claim to be conservatives who go to D.C. and become establishment, and honestly, that's how we have Donald Trump in the first place.
Yes.
This party created Donald Trump because the establishment didn't do what it was supposed to do.
They'll never admit that, but that's exactly what happened.
It's exactly how we are. That's why I'm totally okay with supporting Donald Trump, and why I'm okay with telling most people who are establishment, you need to get behind this nominee. He is your creation. Had you have done what you're supposed to do in the last 3 or 4 years, we wouldn't have this conversation. But people want someone to go and kick over the table in D.C. And who better to do that than someone who is non-political, who won't settle for the political norms, who demands results like a businessman.
Yeah, somebody there to smash the existing order.
Exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about this dynamic that's happening now with Black Lives Matter, which is an organization that came into development a couple of years ago as a result of some of these police shootings. And now we've got targeted assassinations against police officers happening in places like Baton Rouge, happening in places like Dallas, of course, the ambushes that we're seeing now happening across the country. What's your sense of Black Lives Matter? Is it a creation of the left? Is it being perpetuated by the left in order to, yes, affect social change, but also to affect this election?
You know, I think I look at this objectively, and I see Black Lives Matter as people who are frustrated. And I think a lot of people in the African-American community are frustrated, but they particularly channel that frustration in a very radical way. And by channeling the frustration in a radical way, they have to take responsibility for what happens when you do that. And they create an environment where there's hostilities towards police. And I'll tell you what I appreciated the most about the first night is when my good friend, the sheriff, came up and
David Clark.
When David Clark came out on stage, and he said the Blue Lives Matter. And why that was important to me is because I felt that the Black Lives Matter argument necessitates a racial disagreement about whose life should matter. But he changed the conversation to say that blue lives matter, and I felt that was a good thing because it recognized the fact that there are black police officers who've been killed as well. It's not a black versus white issue. It's a law and order issue. It's a whether or not we're going to support police and have a society of rules and law and not anarchy. And I think most Americans can get behind that message. They can say, yes, cops' lives matter. They're the people who take care of us and who protect our communities. So I think as people thought it was controversial, but the Blue Lives Matter argument is, I think, a winning one for us because cops of all races and creeds are under attack right now, and we need to support them.
What do you make, because I saw Sheriff Clark give that phenomenal speech, and he's a good friend of mine also, and I emailed him right away and said bravo.
Bravo.
But there is controversy attached to anybody who tries to appropriate some of the phrase Black Lives Matter. So whether it's Blue Lives Matter or All Lives Matter, which is basic common sense, if you're a feeling, sentient human being, of course all lives matter. But that has become controversial.
Well,
what do you make of that?
The reason I don't think it's controversial is because there are no Smurfs, there are no blue people. So he's talking about a part of our government, a role, a responsibility of a civil society. Do you believe in a civil society you should have police, and should those police be entrusted with the responsibility of making sure they protect people and property? And they should. So he pivoted the conversation from a racial conversation of black, white, or whoever's life should matter, and we're talking about the role and responsibility of police. And that is a discussion I think we win on every time, because at the end of the day, I think everyone wants to dial 911 and they want someone to show up. Yeah. They don't want to get a busy signal.
Especially in these high crime areas.
Exactly.
That tend to be heavily minority. And these police officers, regardless of their race, are going into these communities to protect the law-abiding citizens.
And even more so, when you say Blue Lives Matter, you start to rebuild the perception and the reputation of police. So if you're an African American or you're Latino and you live in a community like you're speaking of, you want that young kid to respect the police officer, one, because he's less likely to get in trouble and respect that officer when he encounters him on the street, but he's also more likely to want to become a police officer. He's more likely to want to come back to his own community and help keep it safe. That's what we saw in Dallas, what the sheriff was saying. They're hiring. But you know, nobody wants to take a job that nobody respects. So we have to start and turn the page to respect police officers again. And saying Blue Lives Matter, to me, is turning the corner, saying, you know what? It's about the job, it's about the profession, and the role they play in society.
But don't you think that especially has to come from black leaders like yourself?
Yeah.
I mean, I eliminate President Obama because I think he's really let the black community down. I mean, the one thing that a black president can do in ways that a white president cannot do is try to uplift the black community and speak to all of these issues. And President Obama hasn't done that. In fact, he's done the other side. He's taken the other side and really stoked the flames here.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about black leadership in this country on the points that you just raised.
Well, I think that the left is afraid of really engaging Black Lives Matter in a discussion. They really have been hostile to the left almost as bad as they've been hostile to the right. It's going to be interesting next week to see what Hillary Clinton does with that element of the Democratic Party, and because really they're aligned with Bernie Sanders. When I live in Atlanta and I saw the protests last week in Atlanta, and you saw Black Lives Matter signs, but right behind the Black Lives Matter signs, you saw Democratic Socialist chapters of Atlanta. That's just the Bernie Sanders campaign manifesting itself in this post-Occupy movement. Because these are the same Occupy people. Honestly, all the Bernie Sanders people are Occupy people who just joined the campaign. So now they are fanning the flames of Black Lives Matter, and I think that element is so anti-Hillary. I think you probably have a better chance of seeing more hostile protests in Philadelphia than you see here in Cleveland.
I totally agree with you, and I agree with you. She's going to be walking a very fine line next week because she can't afford to alienate her base, which is largely African American, supports Black Lives Matter, and yet on the other hand, if she fully embraces them, she's going to alienate the center, whom she needs to win.
Right.
So let's talk about that going forward. What you're hearing during this convention in Cleveland is essentially a law and order message. You heard from Rudy Giuliani, you heard from Chris Christie, you'll hear from Donald Trump tomorrow, Mike Pence tonight. These are law and order candidates who are saying enough with the chaos, enough with the terrorism, enough with the assassination of police officers, enough with Black Lives Matter and all of this chaos. We're going to restore order to the United States, so we're going to do it by rule of law. Mrs. Clinton is now going to be running against that. How do you think this is going to shake out?
You know, I think that what you're going to see from Hillary Clinton next week is she's going to use her vice president to be a counterweight. So who we see Friday as her VP is going to be very telling of the direction she's going to go. I think if she picks someone who is in the Senate, I think she's going to pick a minority. I think she will. I think that she sees Donald Trump and Pence as being the old guard, and she's going to try to pick someone who's diverse.
Like whom? Like Cory Booker, senator from New Jersey?
You know,
or
Democrats do believe that a first-term senator can be president, so probably so. We got a few in our party, too. But, you know, Cory Booker's a good guy, but he's not ready to be president, unfortunately. But I do think he can speak to an audience that she needs help with. So, you know, when we talk about law and order, I want to be specific. People look to Goldwater and prior campaigns of Nixon, and those were times when African Americans didn't really, that law and order was a dog whistle. It was are you putting black people in jail? What are you doing? And so I think that Donald Trump has to be careful here, because when he says law and order, he needs to embrace the fact that if there's enough laws on the books, as we enforce them, then we can bring law and order back to society. As long as we don't see another uprising of mass incarceration in this country, I think he can actually pivot and actually have inroads in the black community.
And you know, that's an interesting issue. Criminal justice reform,
Right.
there are a lot of conservatives and liberals who are coming
Exactly.
together on that issue.
They are.
So that's something that we can have some bipartisan agreement
That is the
on,
bridge
right?
for Donald Trump and Governor Pence to get inroads in the black and Latino community.
Yeah.
This is an issue that has bipartisan support. I want Donald Trump to have a platform, not just rhetoric there, because I think he can win there. But he has to do it in a way by saying we don't need to create a whole lot more laws for more people to, to break. The ones we have are good. And the people who enforce them, our police officers, they're good at it. So let them do their job.
You know, very important issues that are going to run straight through November. And the choice for the American people could not be more stark in terms of Donald Trump and his running mate Mike Pence, and Hillary Clinton and her full embrace of the far left.
Yeah.
And Ashley, we really appreciate your being here today and your incredible insights. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Ashley Bell, delegate from the state of Georgia. I'm Monica Crowley. This is FoxNews.com.